A very good afternoon to you and welcome. Question and answer time. I've gathered quite a few up here. Decided I thought it would be better to deal with them by way of a vlog rather than just leave a one sentence answer. I can sort of be a little bit more in depth. Perhaps. I mean, I don't know the questions. I've only scanned them very briefly. Well, some of them, not all of them, so I'm a little bit nervous. But yeah, I just thought it'd be a little bit more personal to answer them in person. So, first one off, not in any particular order. How often do you develop and scan your own roles versus using a dedicated lab? Well, to newcomers, I should give you some context. I'm just black and white. Street photography. So I develop and scan all my photography myself. I think if I was a colour shooter, I'd probably use a lab. I think. I'm not sure why. Anyway, I'm not. So yeah, I develop my own stuff. I've got a couple waiting to go in. Waiting to finish one film off before I develop those two, and then I'll scan them on an 850 scanner, an Epson 850 scanner. So always is the answer to that. Do you spend much time on Instagram? Well, what's much time? I think I go on Instagram pretty much every day, and I'm on there for about 5 to 10 minutes once a day, sometimes twice a day, but normally it's in the evening. I just dip into it, and then I don't know, I think too many adverts come on and I just lose interest a little bit, or every other image or video is an advert. So, based on what I've been looking at on the internet for the past week or so. It tends to be a sort of dip in I would say 10 minutes max. I don't time myself, but I'm guessing that's about the amount of time. There have been one or two occasions where I've spent more time than that, I'm absolutely certain. But the vast majority of the time, 5-10 minutes. Anyway, yeah, I think that's probably enough of an answer to that question. Do you consider shooting more digital because of film prices? Well, no, I don't own a digital camera now, other than my smartphone, the thing I'm recording this on. I mean, if I was shooting commercially, then I'd obviously be shooting digital all the time. I'm not. I've always shot film. The price of film, yes, has gone up, far more so with Kodak than Ilford. Ilford have, Kodak are trying to pull a fast one, aren't they? I think, or they've just got a bunch of. Yeah, look, what Kodak have done, I think, is just is taking the mick. To be perfectly honest, Ilford have gone up, but not nearly so much. And I've always used Ilford anyway, HP5 and what's the other one called? The finer grain version. It's probably not a good time for a vlog if I can't remember names. Anyway, HP5 has always been my go-to film. I've used Kodak in the past, but I wouldn't consider them. I wouldn't consider them now just because they've gone up so much. Maybe there are good reasons, but I just think sometimes, everyone has to earn a profit. Everyone and needs to earn a living. But you sometimes think that companies just rein it in sometimes, and you don't mind them going up a little bit, but not a third of the price. It's just, yeah, it makes no sense. And I don't think it makes any sense for them as a company either, because I think people just stop using them. They can't afford to use them, apart from anything else. So I think they shoot themselves in the foot. I think it's greed. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I've studied bulk loading film, so that that helps. HP5 and Delta, I was going to say. Yeah, Delta. That's what I couldn't remember. You don't save that much, especially initially, because you've got the outlay for the loading thing. But once you're up and running and you've gone past that initial outlay, I think I think HP5 on average is about £10 a roll of film for a 36 exposure, and I would say bulk loading brings it down to about £8. So it doesn't seem like much of a saving, but it's 20%, isn't it? I mean, if you buy a carton of 10 films at £10 each, and you go to one shop and they're charging you £100 for those 10 films, and you go to another shop and they're charging you £80, you're going to think, you're going to buy £80 as long as they're all the same date and what have you. So it works out, and lots of 10, you're saving quite a lot of money. I think it doesn't seem like that much if you just think of it as a roll of film, but it all adds up. So I'm doing that. I've got a block of Delta at the moment, so the next 10 films are going to be Delta. I'll do a vlog on that if anybody wants to learn about that. It's not difficult. You've just got to work a few things out. Make sure you don't do a couple of things. It's quite easy, very convenient, and cheaper. No, I don't use digital because I just prefer film, and that's pretty much that. How do you come up with a photo project idea? I don't, because I don't shoot projects. I have shot projects in the past, for sure, but I can't remember the last one I did. Oh, maybe I do. I was having my car washed, and I sat there and thought, people slapping suds on the windscreen, and I looked round, and most of the lads there seemed to, I think they were Romanian or Bulgarian, Eastern European of some. I'm not sure exactly, but I noticed that. I didn't do it then. I went back, took my camera, and asked the manager if it was okay, and he had a quick word with some of the people, and some of them didn't want it, but they were okay me doing it as long as they knew, they put their hand over the face and that kind of thing, which is fine, which I think made for some better photos, actually. That was a sort of self-initiated thing, but generally I don't shoot projects. I mean, I'm not adverse to it, but I just kind of don't think that way most of the time. But I wanted to do this because, I just, something about water, reflections, and the sort of hand up, and the suds, and the, dripping cloths, and it was just all seemed like a, perfectly good thing to have a go at doing, and I got some nice shots. I was very pleased with it. But on the whole, I don't shoot projects, so yeah. if I was asked to do one, as long as I felt like I could do a good job, I would definitely do it. But yeah, it's just not my natural default thing to do. I just deal in single images. You got any tips on setting up a darkroom for beginners? Well, it's been a while since I've used a darkroom, since I had a darkroom. I'm not a big one for giving advice. I can just tell you what I did, having read stuff about it. I guess where you source your stuff, again, this is just black and white, so colours are a slightly different thing. I mean, it's the same in principle, but it's not the same. It is, different chemicals and what have you. But I think it's probably much easier and cheaper to set up a black and white darkroom than it is a colour. But anyway, yeah, it's just what I did. It's not really advice. I stay away from advice because everyone's different, As I say, this is just what I did. So I remember it was paramount for me to get a cold, I think it's called a cathode light source for my enlarger, as opposed to a warmer tungsten one. And I wanted sort of direct light rather than diffused light. A lot of people don't like that because it produces extremely sharp images. Every little glorified thing on that negative and scratch is going to come through. It's really going to, it's warts and all kind of thing. But that's kind of what I like. The lens, as I said, with any camera, it's the same with any enlarger. You're carrying that quality of the negative through to the enlarger, and so you don't want to lose that quality of lens that you have on your camera with the lens that you have on your enlarger. So you want to get a very good Schneider lens or something of that ilk. Source your stuff. I mean, the main thing obviously is the enlarger, but the little things, the timers are very important. One that works for you, that you can work with, that's easy to work, that's reliable. And I mean, my technique was just Ansel Adams. I read those 3 books: the camera, the negative, and the print. Those are my Bibles, so I went by that. I didn't skimp on stuff. I mean, the biggest tip for me learning was to be precise. If you're precise, then you can, it's a learning curve. If you're precise with your times and precise with mixing your chemicals and precise with your temperatures, then you can, process of elimination, you can proceed much quicker and get to a point that you want to get to, whether whatever it is you want to achieve with a darkroom, and ultimately your print, sumptuous blacks and all that kind of stuff, neutral tones or not, or whatever you want to achieve. But yeah, be precise. If you're not precise, then you're kind of not. It's one step forward, 2 steps back. So you don't really know where you are. You don't know why something has happened like that. Was it because you didn't mix your chemicals properly, or a bit sloppy, or a bit, do you know what I mean? Other than finding good places to source equipment, because sometimes it is expensive, but you can get it cheaply as well. Other than the actual financial aspect, just get it light tight, get it where you're not going to be interrupted. You can shut yourself off, you can concentrate, and you can just enjoy the art of printmaking. And that was always my remit anyway. Whether or not that's a tip, will they be considered tips or not? I don't know. It's up to you. That's another Instagram one. Do I spend much time on it? Already answered that. What's your opinion on the price increase? Well, it sucks, pure and simple. But again, that's mainly Kodak, not Ilford. So, thank you, Ilford. Is it sustainable? Is shooting film sustainable? Depends what you mean by sustainable. Is it going to harm the planet? I mean, sometimes you think just getting out of bed in the morning is going to, you're going to you're going to harm the planet in some way. Just breathing, CO2 or I don't know. It's obviously film is. I don't know. I don't have the stats on. I'm sure there's some negative aspect to digital photography, isn't there? Perhaps not so obvious as chemicals and what have you, but is it sustainable? Yes, it is. I think I'm very, very careful about all sorts of stuff. But my digital footprint, I haven't been on holiday for several years now. I don't drive a car now, so I do all sorts of things that I think, I don't have a hang-up. I've always done photography, and I'm not going to stop now. I do less of it. I'm not as frantic about it as I used to be, but I'm never going to stop. So, yeah. Yes is the answer to that. Okay, I've been using a Pentax K1000 and love it. I enjoy doing all types of photography. I want to step up. What would I suggest from a K1000? I don't know. If a K1000 is working for you and you're enjoying the results, then why step up? That would honestly be my immediate thoughts. If you have to step up, or if you want a camera, you enjoy doing everything. Well, I mean, I've always thought the FE, Nikon FE, was a fantastic camera. Is a fantastic camera. I own one, and I love that. If you really want to step up, I suppose you could go to an F3, which just does pretty much anything you could ever want an SLR camera to do. It's bigger and heavier, but not in an F size sense. It's not a brick or anything, but it is larger than the K1000. I think a K1000 will do most things. I mean, okay, I think it only shoots at 1,000th of a second. That's fine for the vast majority of things. It really is. I think the F3 is 2,000th of a second. So, are you shooting at the sun? I don't know. It's if you're enjoying the K1000, why not just, enjoy it, and just go with it. If you've got a good combo, good lens combo with the body, then and it's doing most things. What is the K1000 not doing for you? You have to ask yourself, why? Is it preventing you from shooting a certain way? If it is, then look at cameras that do shoot that way. Maybe it hasn't got. I can't remember the K1000. I've never used one. College had a whole lorry load of them, but I never used it. I always used the F3, my own camera. You know, the F3 did everything, so I was experimenting at that time, and I thought, okay, that the F3 is going to do everything, so it's going to be a great camera to work with. It's very reliable, had that professional quality to it, reliability and what have you. So, you know, but I didn't need to shoot with that. I could have shot with an FE quite happily. Those would be my two. You know, if you want to keep SLR, stay SLR. You know, you could go FE2, FM2, but I honestly prefer the FE. I think it's far less likely to go wrong. I think most FEs and FMs have had, FE2s and FM2s have had or will need a change of shutter. Yeah, I don't know. The FE is not a it's not a massively glamorous camera, but loads of people love it, and for very good reason, I think. And it is definitely a step up from the K1000. But yeah, difficult to gauge, really. If you don't find yourself in places where you're thinking, I wish I had this, I wish I had that, then I would stick with the K1000. I really would, but maybe that's the boring answer, sorry. What makes you getting... how do you get good at photography? What's good? And what do you mean by good? Honestly, I would say the obvious, just practice. Getting at one with your camera. Getting at one, understanding the Sunny 16 rule, so that you just, you know, whenever you step outside, without even thinking about it, you're going, yeah, 1/2 of a second at f11, you know, or 2/50 of a second at f11 because the sun's out, or 500 maybe if you're shooting digitally. It's just this, you know, it's just getting very familiar and very automatic and muscle memory with all kind of not boring things, but the technical things that you need to know. I would say initially, if you're starting out, just hammer the hell out of one camera and one lens. Don't keep changing lenses, and don't use a zoom lens. Always use a prime lens, and work out the absolute maximum. Eke out what is brilliant about that camera and use it and understand it and get very familiar with it and get automatic with it, so you're not even thinking about it. That, I think, goes a long way. I don't know at what level you're at, or whether you're just starting out or what, but I think those things are paramount. They take a bit of time. I mean, I'm still thinking about exposure. I'm always constantly thinking about exposure, but I'm not thinking about it in terms of it being a problem or it being. It's just how, you know, I have to tweak certain things, certain ways, depending on what I'm shooting and what the conditions are like. So I just use ambient light, never use flash. I have done in the past, but not for the last 40 years. If I go indoors, if I'm shooting a portrait, you know, what's the ambience like in that room? Who am I shooting? Where's the light coming from? And understanding light. Understanding light is so important. I was an assistant, so I was working with photographers who used all kinds of different lighting. But understanding it and, you know, not necessarily reading what good lighting is, because that is bull for me. You know, it's just somebody's personal preference. That's the way they were taught, or whatever. Lighting is a very subjective thing. You can do all sorts of things with lighting, but it's just understanding it and not being afraid of it, and looking at images that you like, and then looking at the eyes and seeing the key lights, and what if you see a hexagonal, then it's shot with an umbrella, a flash, Elinchrom lighting or something, in a studio, or it's not just studio lighting, but it's flash lighting. Study that kind of stuff. Look at stuff that you like. Look at stuff you don't like. See where the lights. Is it coming down the back of the head? I mean, look at films. There were times when I couldn't walk into a cinema without analysing every single scene. Films that were beautifully lit. Not so much if it's a science fiction film or something like that, because that's just all computer generated anyway. But beautifully lit films and scenes, try and see what's behind the lens, try and see what lighting they're using, and that kind of thing. And then don't be afraid to break the rules, or don't be afraid to work out your own lighting. I mean, I can't remember the last time I didn't use, if I was indoors, just the window light. And I'm not saying I'm a genius with lighting or anything, but I'm not afraid for the face to be in shade a little bit like mine is now, and for it to come from the side. I'm not talking about the really harsh stuff that you've seen on some videos where it's just absolutely bleaching me out. Well, maybe that's a good thing, I don't know, but don't be afraid to what are you trying to how interesting is their face? Maybe shade is a wonderful thing as well. It's not just lighting, it's shade and lighting, I think. I think shade is infinitely more interesting than light most of the time. If you're going to use light, where is it going to come in? How is it going to? Don't make a big song and dance about it, but just be aware of it and enjoy it, and literally just look at your hand. Look at when you've got light on your hand. Turn your hand around and see what's happening. See if it's hard light. See if you're seeing every tiny little pore, and just play with it. See it, understand it. Hard light, soft light, diffuse light. They're all things that can get you good at photography, or get you further anyway. Advance yourself up that learning curve. Understanding what you like, understanding what what you want to do, what interests you. I think is understanding what you want to photograph. I think is a key thing. If you're interested in loads of things, that's fine. Photograph loads of things. Don't worry about it. You'll work it out. You'll go along and you'll get confused and you'll be scratching your head. But then things will start to fall into place sooner or later. You will understand more about yourself and more about, are you just shooting inanimate objects? Are you not shooting people? And if you're not shooting people, are you not shooting people because you're shy, or because actually you just prefer scenes without people? Either's, the latter is fine. But if you're not shooting them because you want to shoot them, but you're shy, then you're only shooting stuff that secondary stuff. You're only shooting secondary stuff. You're not shooting what you really want to be shooting. So work out strategies for how you can photograph people in the way that you want to photograph them. I mean, I've asked, when I was young, I don't do it now, but when I was footloose and fancy free and kind of all probably full of myself and overly and stupidly confident, perhaps, I would ask strangers off the street. And I just said to myself, well, if I don't ask them, well, I'm not gonna get. I can't go and afford to pay an actor, and I don't want that anyway. I wanted a real person. But what's the worst they can say? No. Some people did, and some people said yes, and I've got those images to this day that I love. And I think, my God, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have those images. And it was more of a sort of portrait type thing that I was doing. People that I thought were interesting or walked beautifully or had something about them that just and yeah, you'd look stupid, but I didn't care. It was I was doing something to try and produce a positive outcome, and they would either kind of see that, work that out, or not, or think I was just a weirdo and saying thanks but no thanks, and no harm done. I wouldn't push it. I wouldn't push it at all. It was just a sort of a thing that either was going to be or not, and either way, yeah, I was probably slightly vaguely disappointed for a few minutes if it didn't work out, but that's okay. Can't win them all. But yeah, that was my need to overcome that hurdle. It was a way of interacting with people and overcoming my shyness, and then if they said yes, working out how, where, when, and then interacting with them and sort of almost practicing being able to talk with somebody and convey with somebody what you thought you were trying to do, but maybe you're not going to do an exact thing, but I wasn't always sure. I wanted to sort of keep things open a little bit depending on how they were. I didn't want to sort of hem them into one particular thing often. Want to go with the flow a little bit. So, that was a need of mine, an absolutely overpowering need, to the point where I would go and humiliate myself. But it didn't really feel like humiliation. It was me upping the odds, upping the chances of being able to do that and shoot some film and use my camera and hopefully maybe possibly getting some great images, because that's all I can think about. Depends on your motivation. Even if they said yes, sometimes I would shoot dross, total and utter dross, but that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes I got something I was really happy with as well, and that was I was learning. I was understanding something about myself, understanding about photography, and thinking about photography, trying to understand how I can get positive outcomes from that situation, get them to be comfortable enough, relaxed enough. Those are all things that were in my mind. Not to sort of be a weirdo, not to be overly silent, but not to be smutty, and I don't know, all these things flood through your mind, and these were things that were important. These were things that I felt I could hopefully, maybe, possibly bring about. Anyway, so I think that's, yeah. Maybe that's a little bit too much for that particular question. Depends what you mean by good, I suppose. What do you do if you have a creative block? I don't have a creative block. I have times when I don't want to take a photograph, but that's different. I don't ever push it. I'm not one of those people that says I have to be out by 9 o'clock every morning shooting. not at all. Some might say I'm lazy. I think saying that you have a creative block is kind of lazy in a way. It's You're not having a creative block. You just don't feel like doing it, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. I know that when I'm not in that place, there's no point in me taking a camera out because I'm just not receptive to anything. I'm not, my mind is somewhere else. And I know equally when I am in the right place, because I'm not thinking of anything. I'm just being receptive. I'm just in this place where I am ultra sensitive to everything going on around me, behind me, sideways, and I know when I'm up for it, and I know when I'm not. It's as simple as that. It's not a creative block. That sounds too pretentious. It sounds like I'm an artist or something. No, just go with how you feel. If you can go out. I mean, this is just for me. If you're one of those people that go out regardless, that's great. Just know that sometimes you're not going to be as receptive on some days as others. That's all. It's not really a creative block. It's just time and place, really, as far as I'm concerned. If you could only shoot one film stock, what would it be? HP5. That's easy, wasn't it? One camera I've always wanted but will never buy. I don't know. I don't really have a camera lust. I own 4 cameras, and they are just perfect for me. I could get by with one. The other 3, I think, are just a nostalgic thing in a way. Always want, but never buy. I don't really have one. Maybe there's one out there that I'm not aware of. But yeah, I don't know. Don't have one. That's a bit of a boring answer. Sorry. I can't think of one. Maybe the F6, Nikon F6, perhaps. On some level, I would quite like that, but I know it's too big for me, and that's probably why I'd never buy it. It's like the most astonishing SLR camera ever made in the history of SLR cameras, and so I kind of want it on that level, but I won't use it, and that's why I won't buy it, really. Yeah, maybe that fits that answer to some extent. How old were you when you started photography, and where did you get your inspiration? How old? I don't have parents that were photographers or remotely interested in photography, really. Maybe my mother did a bit later on, but not in any serious sense. I want to say around about 17, I think. I went to Mexico, bought my first SLR camera there. I think I was 17, something like that. But I was always interested in art as a kid. I always used to draw, used to love drawing, used to love looking at pictures of one sort or another. But photography, my first camera, when I was 17. And I was, it wasn't just buying my first camera. It was like whoa, this is a powerful thing. This is something I absolutely love. Didn't know anything about it, really. But, yeah, it was something that very quickly became something for me. Became very intoxicating. Inspiration, I get my inspiration from everywhere. I've mentioned this before in previous vlogs, but just life. Not all my photographs are pretty happy pictures at all. They reflect life, good and bad, ups and downs. So yeah, I just go with that. Books, films, but life itself, my own personal adventures, my own personal interactions and loves and losses and all that kind of stuff. Life itself. And I say it's inspiration. I don't kind of consciously think of it as inspiration, but I know damn well that's where it all comes from. It goes in, your life goes in, and then comes out via a lens. Processing life. It's therapy in a way. It really is. It's the one thing in my life that is constant and absolute. It's always there. I never have to worry about it. I never have to. It's my way of being free. It's so long as I respect the tools, so long as I respect the rules of photography, it enables me to produce things that I didn't know I could even, images I didn't even know I could take. So it constantly surprises me. It constantly fascinates me. It never gets more, but it never gets less. It just stays absolute. And it is my one thing in life that I can rely on and love, and as long as film doesn't go extinct. I mean, even if it did, I would just resort to digital. I would. So, yeah. Have you ever opened your camera without winding the film back? Yep, absolutely. I don't know anybody that hasn't, if they're being honest. I can't remember the last time I did it. Can I? I would say I've probably done it a dozen times in my life. And yeah, it's horrible when it happens. It is. But generally speaking, you realise it pretty quickly, you close the back pretty quickly. You normally lose 8 shots on a 36 exposure film. Do you? I mean, it depends on how far advanced you are. Of course it does, but yeah, I mean, I would say I've probably done it. I mean, I've got no way of quantifying that, but it's not something I do regularly. It's just, I think it happens when you're just not thinking, or you've got your head somewhere else. And I know when I did it. I did it in Norway. So 2019. Yeah, I did it then, definitely. I got my 2 cameras out with me. Two Leicas. I had 2 MPs back then. And what did I do? I know it was the black one that it happened with. And I actually did lose about 8 images. I I can't even remember how I did it, to be honest. I think it was just a brain fart. I just wasn't thinking. I don't think I got confused. Maybe having the two cameras, I did get confused. Maybe, I don't know. I probably just wasn't thinking, or whatever. But yes, I have. And I think every film photographer has as well. Probably, I would imagine. Do I scan my negatives myself or let a lab do it? I've done that. I've already answered that. I always do it myself. Labs I use for prints. So I get my scan where I want it, and then I send off for the print. I have printed my own stuff in a darkroom, and I've also printed it using a professional printer, but I don't have a printer anymore. And to be honest, I think I got a bit fed up of going through ink and ordering ink all the time. And yeah, there's a lab in London that I use that are very, very good. Yeah, it's a bit more expensive, but I don't have the hassle of, they give me what I want. I get it. I do everything myself in the scan, and they just complete it with the print. It never comes back wrong. It is exactly what I give them. So I just kind of prefer it like that. The printers I would want, I can't afford anymore. Proper professional printers, very expensive, and yeah, I would just rather use theirs. Simple as that, really, and pay slightly over the odds, but hey, they do a very good job. Let's have a look. What advice do you have for someone who wants to make their first zine? That's like a mini magazine. Be patient. If you want to make money, then don't use more than 15 images. Keep the cost of the paper quality down. Keep the price down. And once it goes to print, that's it. So scrutinize those prints. One, work out if they're good enough, if you like them sufficiently, and make sure that you've got them exactly how you want them looking, because that's they're going to come back like that. Once you've hit the send button, that's it. So be patient, be vigilant, be careful, be mindful, get them to where you want them to be, and and if you want to make money, just use, I think, 10-15 images, something like that, because you're being charged by the page. So yeah. Get the sequencing right as well. Play with the sequencing. It shouldn't be too difficult with 10 images. What's a good way to get accurate, consistent exposures? Practice. Know the Sunny 16 rule inside out. Automatically. So it's automatically in your head. And then I don't do this, but I can tell you what exposure is at any given time of the day, on any kind of a day. I just know that, but there are things when you go on, because I'm using available light again, just daylight. So, but there are times when there's a vestibule or there's an overhang or something. So you've got to be mindful of those things. But I know where my camera is. I know that I'm at f11, and I'm normally, in that neck of the woods, unless something says to me, I want a shorter depth of field. you know, because the background is so ugly or something, or confusing. You know, so that's an aesthetic choice. But you know, if in doubt with film, overexpose, don't underexpose. Always, even if you're not in doubt, slightly overexpose. I would. You know, underexposing is horrible. Just practice. There's no shortcut to it. You've just got to work it out and get good at it. It takes a bit of time to get good at photography. It's not difficult, but it's not easy to be good quickly. It's easy if you're shooting automatically all the time. Point and shoot, great. Just fill your boots, you know. But if you want to go that extra step, and if you want to have your own inputs and your own aesthetic, then you need to learn a few rules, and you know, and practice a lot. Work out what a 50mm lens gives you at 2.8. Oh, but it didn't. Like, that was at 2.8 as well, and it all looks different. Yeah, that's because your subject matter was 6 foot from the camera. That subject matter is, you know, infinity from the camera. Completely different depth of field. So you know, whenever I shoot, I always have this sixth sense of, well, not even a sixth sense. I know what I'm going to get. I mean, I should know what I'm going to get because I've been doing it a long time. But you always want to get to a point where you know more or less. That's one of the reasons why I say just use one lens or get good at one lens. Get a lens that suits you. That can take a bit of time to work out, but if you're just using one lens, it makes things so much simpler, so much easier. Just practice, understanding what you want, what your vision is. Do you like most things in focus most of the time, or all of the time? Do you like really short depths of field? Most things out of focus are behind the subject matter, or in front of the subject matter. You know, or do you like both? Do you like a bit of both sometimes? Work out what it is that you like. You know, if you like most things in focus most of the time, then you're probably wanting to use a slightly wider lens, because that is more forgiving. It's going to have more things in focus most of the time. It's got a bigger depth of field. That's just physics, you know. Nothing about what I say or you say. That's just pure physics. So understand that. Understand, you know, that's great if you like that. You know, that's how you want to then be thinking. And then work, you know, get a prime lens, 35 or a 28, something like that. And then work out what f11 gives you. Work out what 2.8 gives you. Work out what f16 gives you. Does it give you vignetting? Does it give you vignetting wide open at 2.8 or f2 or whatever lens you've got? Do you like just a little bit of fall off? Do you want everything pin sharp? These are the things you have to ask yourself, and then marry the lens to your vision and what you want to see in your image, i.e. sharpness, and how tilted it is based on how wide your lens is and how difficult it is to keep it a nice sort of, you know, but maybe that doesn't matter to you. But don't be lazy about it. Don't kind of go, oh, well, you know, other people's are like that, so it doesn't matter. What matters is what you like, is your vision. That's how you arrive at a you know, Matt Stewart, I've mentioned him many times before. You know, his whole thing is humour. And he takes some wonderful, wonderful images. But he knows himself. You know, he's quite a funny guy. He's a lovely guy. But he loves that humour element, and he does it better than anyone else that I've seen, to be honest. I really do. But he knows himself, and that's how he goes. That's how he boxes. That he knows what a 35mm lens is going to give him. He knows that he likes to shoot, film 250th at f11 or whatever it is, because he likes most things in focus most of the time. It's tweaking things to how you want to see that image look based on the subject that you like. In his case, it's humor. What floats your boat? What's your thing? Yeah. Next question. Are you interested in making another book? Yeah, I'm always interested in. I am making another book. What's your favourite camera and lens combo? Well, my MP and my Summa at 50mm. That's quick and easy. What's your favourite photo you've taken in the past year? I'm gonna say I'm still thinking about it. I'm still trying to work it out. It's in that sort of stage where any photograph I take, I always, I put it in the file in the folder, and then I look at it for 6 months. And then I normally know if I'm liking it. If I'm still liking it after 6 months, then it stays. If I'm not, no. But I've moved images aside before and then liked them later on after a year or something. They've grown on me or something. I don't know. Other images I've liked immediately and disliked after 6 months. But at the moment, I would say it's one of three. I'm going to say this one. Yeah. But although I do like the cog. Yeah. One of these two. Anyway. What format do you prefer? 35, 120 or 5.4? 35. I mean, I love the dynamic range of medium format and large format, but I can't use them because I can't use those cameras with street photography. They're too big. Just from a physical point of view, they're too heavy to carry around, for me anyway. So it's got to be 35mm. And I do love the 35mm shape. 6.7's a bit fatter. Yeah, I 35mm every time. Can you do a video on metering? I'm finding it difficult. I have done a video on metering. Check back on, have a look on my channel. I've done a video on that. Metering is not difficult. It's not difficult. It depends what you're shooting, of course. If you're shooting street, then it's difficult because you've got to do it so quickly. But generally speaking, it's not difficult. It's just, your shutter speed versus your aperture. Both let in light, more light or less light. And it's just using a combination of those things. The only difference is the aperture affects your depth of field. So yes, it will let in or emit light, but it also affects your depth of field. more so or less so, depending on whether you've got it open or stop down, and also depending on your lens, because longer lenses have much shorter depths of field. Wider lenses, more depth of field, more tolerance for depth of field. So yeah, have a look at that first. I mean, metering with a hand meter or metering with a Sunny 16. You know, what are you shooting? If it's a light meter studio, then you press a button, you work out your f-stop, what f-stop you want, f11, f16, what's your lens, how much do you want in focus, and then a corresponding shutter speed depending on your lighting and how you've got it, your rig, and how you've got it set up, what you want to emphasize. You know, it's too vague to be able to be specific about that, but it's not difficult. It's all based off ISO or ASA, whatever your camera says, your film speed or your ISO if it's digital. So how I'm a fan of your work. I recently bought a new camera and digital camera. My question: what do you think about film simulation on digital files? I prefer film, is the short answer. I mean, look, simulation. I think you've answered your own question in a way. It's simulated. It's pretend. It's very clever. It's very, very clever. It can fool the best person most of the time, but you can tell the difference if you put one up against another. A discerning eye can always tell the difference. Does that make it bad? No, it's very good. It's very clever. It's brilliant. Thank you. You know, more choice. That's brilliant. You know, that's what wars were fought over, to give us more choice, ostensibly. But I prefer the real thing. I prefer film grain. So, yeah, that's all I'd say, really. What do I think about it? That's what I think. How do you prepare photos for printing? Just get them to where they look good. Get them to a place where I like the tones and the shade and the shadows and the blacks and the highlights. It's like molding something and getting it just to a place where, you know, the shape's nice, the geometry's nice, the light's nice. On a film camera with exposure, if you open up to where everything bleaches out, a bit like this window is here, and then stop down, it's much easier to see what the correct exposure is than going really dark and then opening to a brighter light to a correct exposure. So always overexpose, bring it down, get the right exposure. It's you know, it. How do you prepare? Well, it's quite a long list of things to get right, but you've just got to use your own intuition. What looks good to you, what feels good to you, what gives you the kind of It's not always about getting the right exposure. Sometimes I darken an image because I you know, it gives me the aesthetic that I like. It reminds me more of how I shot that image. It might look a bit happier and brighter at a correct exposure But a stop darker makes it, gives it a little bit more mood, and represents more what I felt and what I saw and what my eye saw when I shot it. So it's not always about getting the right exposure. It's getting the right exposure for you and how you want your image to look. Do you hate T-Max? No, don't hate T-Max at all. Don't understand anybody that does, really. The 4 films I've used extensively are the 2 Kodaks, Tri-X and T-Max, and Ilford, HP5 and Delta. And they're 4 great films. I don't use the Kodak ones anymore, as I said, because of price. But I'd have no problems using them if they were all the same price. I mean, I'm still going to use HP5 most of the time, the vast majority of the time. But they're all too close of a much of a muchness to really be concerned about. Yes, Tri-X is a little bit more contrasty, but only a little bit more. It's not like it's hugely more expensive. It's more expensive, but it's not hugely more contrasty. And when I use it, I just develop it and allow for that little bit of contrast in the development time. I don't want my negatives to be contrasty. I might want the contrast in the print, in the scan, but sorry, not in the scan, but I don't want it in the negative, because then I can't undo that. I can just nicely, sensibly up it to exactly where I want it in the edit. But if it's already embedded in the negative, I can't do anything about that. I can increase the contrast, but I can't lessen the contrast if it's already contrasty without making it look muddy and horrible. So all 4 films are absolutely great. T-Max is just a finer grained version of Tri-X, in my opinion, in exactly the same way that Delta is, a slightly finer 400. Well, I mean, they do 100s, don't they, in the T-Max range? But I'm talking about 400 ISO films here. Delta is slightly finer 400 ISO film than HP5. I like a little bit more grit by preference, but not to the point where it's going to keep me awake at night. If they're all the same price and I go into a shop and they've only got T-Max, I'm more than happy to use T-Max. I won't buy it now because it's too expensive, but in yesteryear I wouldn't think twice about it. I wouldn't think twice about using Tri-X at all. My absolute favourite, and always has been, just because it gives me everything I want, is HP5. But the other 3 are brilliant as well. They just are slightly not as good as HP5, but they're still brilliant films. It's this whole, if you're going to dislike something, dislike it because of the price. Don't dislike it because it's the film is brilliant. Okay, we're lucky to have it, but not at that price. So how did I get into analog photography? I didn't get into it. It was always, I started off in it. I got into digital for a time, but film, the only thing that was around when I started off was film. So, show us your favourite photos taken by myself. I'll throw some up here. I don't know if they're my favourite, but maybe some of them are. I don't necessarily have favourites, I don't think, really. I don't know, it changes. If the house is on fire, which is the one camera you'd save? Well, the MP because it's the most expensive, and it's my favourite, of course. But I could buy several others. Yeah, no, the MP, the Leica MP. End of story. What's the camera you've always wanted? To try or own. I can't really answer that. Maybe a Pentax 6. I've owned that. I have owned one, a Pentax 6.7. So that doesn't. I can't use that. I mean, there isn't a camera. There isn't a camera. I'm not. I'm not a camera collector. As I say, I've got 4 cameras. That seems excessive to me. But I mean, some people have hundreds, don't they? I'm sure there is one that is out there that would be fantastic to discover. But I mean, I know most cameras, I think. I mean, if you'd asked me, this would be an easier question to answer before me owning the MP. I would have said the MP. But now I've got it, I don't have any lust for cameras at all. I think that's probably a good place to stop. I mean, rattling on for however long that is. Yeah, let's call that a wrap. I hope that's been interesting to some degree, on some level, to some people. Thank you very much for stopping by, and see you for the next one. Cheers.